Welcome to the Unpacking the Framework video series. This series provides valuable information about the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. My name is Denise Luscombe, and this video introduction is being recorded on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and the land you're listening from, and recognise their continued connection to country, waterways and community. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present. This video is one of a series that describes the evidence and practice information that underpins the principles of the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. You will hear from both national and international speakers throughout this video series. This video covers rights-based, a universal principle of the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention, and is presented by our national speaker, Anne Hollonds. Anne is Australia's National Children's Commissioner, a role based at the Australian Human Rights Commission. The National Children's Commissioner monitors policy and legislation to ensure that the human rights of children are protected and promoted, and provides advice to government. Formerly Director of the Australian Institute of Family Studies, for 23 years Anne was Chief Executive of government and non-government organisations focused on research, policy and practice in child and family wellbeing. As a psychologist, Anne has worked extensively in frontline practice, including in child protection, domestic, family and sexual violence, mental health, child and family counselling, parenting education and family law counselling. Anne currently contributes to numerous expert advisory groups and boards. Her report, Help Way Earlier: How Australia Can Transform Child Justice to Improve Safety and Wellbeing, was tabled in the Australian Parliament in August 2024.
My name is Anne Hollonds. I'm Australia's National Children's Commissioner and I'm based in the Australian Human Rights Commission. And I'm joining you today from the lands of the Camaragal people of the Eora Nations. Pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations people who are listening to this recording. It's now widely understood from decades of evidence that in early childhood, children experience the most rapid period of growth and change during the human lifespan, particularly in terms of early brain development and social and emotional capabilities. This is why it's important from the perspective of the human rights of children. Children form strong emotional attachments with their parents or caregivers from whom they seek nurturing, care, guidance and protection, and in ways that are respectful of their individuality and their growing capabilities. They also establish their own important relationships with other children. Through these relationships, they learn to negotiate and coordinate shared activities, to resolve conflicts and manage their impulses and emotions. They try to make sense of the physical, social and cultural dimensions of the world that they inhabit, learning progressively from their activities and through those relationships with other children and adults. These early years are the foundation for their physical and mental health, emotional security, cultural and personal identity and developing competencies. Australia ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1990. This convention is an international human rights treaty which formally and explicitly outlines the rights of children in international law, including basic human rights such as the right to be free from abuse, neglect and exploitation, the right to an education and health care, and the right to be free from discrimination of any kind. The Convention emphasises respect for the inherent human dignity of all children, the importance of recognising diversity, including learning styles, abilities, gender, family circumstances and geographic location, and the principles of non-discrimination, best interests of the child, participation, and survival and development. Unlike many other countries, Australia has not incorporated the Convention on the Rights of the Child into our domestic laws. However, you will see its principles mentioned in a variety of ways in some legislation and policies. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child specifically states that all children have a right to an education that lays a foundation for the rest of their lives, maximises their abilities, and respects their family, cultural and other identities and languages. The Convention also recognises children's right to play and be active participants in all matters affecting their lives. Article 7 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states that all necessary measures must be taken to ensure the full enjoyment by children with disabilities of all their human rights and fundamental freedoms on an equal basis with other children. The best interests of the child is a primary consideration, and all children with disabilities have the right to express their views freely on all matters affecting them. Their views should be given due weight in accordance with their age and maturity on an equal basis with other children, and they should be provided with disability and age-appropriate assistance as needed to realise that right. We have national strategies, frameworks and initiatives in Australia that incorporate these conventions to some degree into our early childhood education and care policies. For example, the guiding principles of the National Education and Care Services Quality Framework state that the rights and best interests of the child are paramount. The Early Years Strategy 2024 to 2034 explicitly states that it respects children's rights and is committed to meeting Australia's commitments under human rights treaties. The Early Years Learning Framework for Australia, called Belonging, Being and Becoming, states that it's underpinned by a child rights approach, and this framework also supports implementation of the national principles for child-safe organisations. A policy priority of the National Disability Strategy 2021 to 31 is that children with disability can access and participate in high-quality early childhood education and care. High-quality, affordable, inclusive and accessible early childhood education and care equips children and their families to succeed through life. The benefits of accessing quality early years education continue on through their primary education years and beyond, and supports future educational attainment, employment, economic and social participation. These documents, these policy frameworks, highlight the central role of young children's rights in the provision of quality teaching and learning and service delivery. Principle 8 of the National Disability Strategy is respect for the evolving capacities of children with disabilities and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. In our work, it asks us to reflect on these questions. Are children with disability being treated equally to children without disability? Is the best interest of the child a primary consideration? Are children with disability being given the opportunity to participate in decisions based on their age and maturity and on an equal basis with other children? And do children with disability have access to appropriate supports to make or participate in making decisions? Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child affirms that children have the right to express their views in all matters affecting them and requires that those views be heard and given due weight in accordance with the child's age and maturity. It recognises the potential of children to enrich decision-making processes, to share perspectives and to participate as citizens and actors of change. The practical meaning of children's right to participate must be considered in matters concerning children. As professionals working with young children, you have the role of promoting children's voice and participation in decision-making processes and enabling greater opportunities to hear from them. You have the responsibility to listen to children and to consider their opinions and act on their wishes, taking into account the child's best interests. Part of this means being able to identify and use appropriate resources and tools to facilitate their participation and decision-making. As adults, we are the duty bearers of children's rights, and we play a critical role in supporting and contributing to children's participation in decision-making in early childhood. Recently, I came across a toolkit from Ireland which shares practical examples for children, for including children from birth to 5 years in participation in decision-making. It's called Toolkit for Including Children from Birth to 5 Years in Participation in Decision-Making. It's based on the Laura Lundy model of participation, which I use extensively in my work. This model provides a pathway to help conceptualise Article 12 of the Convention, and it has 4 elements: space, which means children and young people must be given safe, inclusive opportunities to form and express their views. The second one is voice. Children and young people must be facilitated to express their views. Third one is audience. The views must be listened to. And finally, influence, which is about the fact that the views of the children must be acted upon as appropriate. So the 4 elements of space, voice, and audience. Space, voice, audience, and influence. I think that you'll find both the Lundy model and the Irish toolkit useful in your work. I want to use just one example from the toolkit based on the Lundy model today. It focuses on children choosing their weekly jobs in a preschool. The educators in the preschool room observed that from about the age of about 3, children love doing small jobs to help, such as putting their crayons out, putting cups out, helping the teacher at the printer, and so forth. The educators decided to introduce the idea of children choosing the jobs they like doing during circle time. The educators asked the children if they would like to pick their own jobs every week, and they were very enthusiastic about this. This led to a discussion during which children named different jobs they liked doing. The educators invited the children to take part in designing a job chart on which educators wrote all the jobs children liked doing. Each child decorated their own name on a small coloured card, and each decorated a different job for the chart, which was stuck on a little coloured pocket slots. Educators helped and supported children who wanted help. Once the chart was done, they had complete control over what jobs they wanted to do, and they could slot their name into their job of choice. Each week, the children chose a different job, and they could swap jobs with their friends if they wanted. Children could also choose not to have a job. The educators also facilitated a buddy system on some jobs if 2 children wanted to work together or wanted the same job. Some weeks, children could come up with new jobs for the chart, and the educators added them. In accordance with the Lundy model, the children were ensured space, voice, audience, and influence. And I'll just go through them now. So under space, the children felt safe to express their views because they were in a familiar environment with trusted educators. Each child was able to take as much time as they liked, decorating their own name, designing a part of the job chart, and choosing the job they wanted to do for the week. All the children's choices were acted on in an inclusive way. Under voice, children who needed support to decorate the chart and make choices about their jobs were offered that support by educators. Children were able to suggest any jobs they like for the jobs chart and were encouraged to add new jobs from week to week. They could also choose to buddy with another child to do a particular job. Children were offered different ways of giving their views by either putting their name into the slot or asking an educator to do this for them. Under audience, educators showed that they were ready and willing to listen to the children's views by enabling children to make their own choices about decorating the jobs chart, picking the weekly jobs, swapping jobs with friends, buddying with friends and adding new jobs to the chart. Educators told the children that they could make their own choices about decorating the jobs chart and choosing weekly jobs and adding new jobs to the chart. And then finally, influence. Children knew that they were having an influence because educators listened to them and acted on their job chart design choices and their weekly job choices. The children were given feedback by the educators acting on their decisions. Children could see the impact of their decisions and choices because the educators enabled them to decorate the jobs chart, pick weekly jobs, swap jobs, buddy up for jobs and add new jobs. Children themselves were the key decision makers as no one else influenced their choices about decorating the jobs chart, picking the weekly jobs, swapping the jobs, etc. This is one example which shows how early childhood education and care can be participatory and empowering to children, providing them with practical opportunities to exercise their rights and responsibilities in ways adapted to their interests, concerns, and evolving capacities. It could be anchored in everyday issues that children can identify with. The Lundy model provides an excellent model of how to conceptualise Article 12 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. I encourage you to explore this model further and to use it in your work. And I wanted to acknowledge you for the work that you do with the children that you're responsible for. This is very important work. And I know I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this video and share some reflections. And I wish you great success and enjoyment in your work with children using a rights-based approach every day. Thank you very much.
We hope you've enjoyed this video, part of the video series Unpacking the Framework for the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. The review of best practice in early childhood intervention was commissioned by the Department of Social Services. Led by the University of Melbourne, the project team included PRECI, professionals and researchers in early childhood intervention, Murdoch Children's Research Institute, SNAKE, National Voice for Our Children, Children and Young People with Disability Australia, and ACD, Advocating for Children with Disability. Coordination and production of the video series was led by PRECI.